Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy daily stories about cheating, revenge, and relationship advice. It was a quiet Saturday evening, and the house was unusually still. Our children, Emily and Ben, were both away at college, leaving Laura and me alone for what felt like the first time in years. We had settled into our usual routine. I was curled up on the couch with a novel, and Laura was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. "John," Laura called from the kitchen, her voice breaking the comfortable silence, "can you come here for a minute?" I marked my place in the book and walked into the kitchen. Laura was standing by the counter, chopping vegetables with a focus that seemed a little too intense. "What's up?" I asked. She put down the knife and turned to face me, her expression serious. "I need to talk to you about something." I leaned against the counter, sensing that this was not going to be a casual conversation. "Sure, what's going on?" Laura took a deep breath. "I'm going out on a date tonight." I blinked, trying to process her words. "A date? With who?" Laura's face flushed slightly as she looked away, seemingly uncomfortable. "With Tom. He's someone I've been talking to for a while." "Tom?" I repeated, trying to remember if she had ever mentioned him before. "Why didn't you tell me about him?" Laura's eyes met mine, her gaze steady but guarded. "We've been chatting through work emails. There's a connection there that I wanted to explore." I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. "And what about us, Laura? How can you just decide to go out with someone else like this?" Laura's shoulders tensed. "John, you know we've been in a bit of a rut. Our intimacy, our connection, it's not the same as it used to be. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I just want to see if there's still something out there for me." I struggled to keep my voice calm. "You think this is going to fix what's wrong between us? Going out with someone else?" Laura sighed, her frustration evident. "It's not about fixing anything. It's about exploring something I feel I need right now. I didn't want to keep this from you, but I also didn't want to make a big deal out of it." I ran a hand through my hair, feeling the weight of her words. "So, this is really happening? You're going to meet him tonight?" "Yes," Laura said, her tone firm but not unkind. "I'm going to meet him at a restaurant downtown. We've been talking about it for a while, and I need to see where this goes." I was at a loss for words. "And what am I supposed to do while you're out?" Laura looked at me with a mix of sympathy and determination. "You can do whatever you need to do, John. I hope you understand that this isn't about replacing you or dismissing our life together. It's just something I need to explore." I nodded, though it felt like a hollow gesture. "Be careful," I said finally, trying to mask the hurt in my voice. "Anne. I hope you find what you're looking for." Laura gave a small, uncertain smile and picked up her purse. "Thank you for understanding, even if it's not easy." As she left the house, I stood there, the weight of her departure settling heavily on my shoulders. The house felt emptier than usual, and the silence that followed was filled with the echoes of my own confusion and heartache. Laura came home that night with a vibrant glow about her, something I hadn't seen in a long time. I was sitting in the living room, pretending to read a book but mostly stewing in my thoughts. When Laura walked through the door, she was wearing the same dress she had chosen for her date, a deep red number that accentuated her figure in a way that made my heart ache. "Hey," she said, her tone almost too bright. "How was your evening?" "Quiet," I replied, trying to keep my voice even. "How was your date?" Laura's face lit up with an excitement that made my stomach clench. "It was amazing. Tom is such a great guy. We had dinner at that new French place downtown." I nodded, though I could barely muster the effort. "And how was that?" Laura's eyes sparkled as she described the evening. "The restaurant was beautiful. We had a cozy table by the window, and the food was incredible. Tom was so attentive, so charming. He made me feel like I was the only person in the room." I could hear the admiration in her voice and tried to ignore the pang of jealousy. "That sounds nice." Laura seemed to sense my detachment and tried to draw me in. We talked about everything and nothing, our interests, our dreams. It felt so effortless. And you know what? There was this undeniable chemistry between us. I looked at her, my frustration boiling beneath the surface. Chemistry? What does that mean? Laura seemed to hesitate for a moment, then continued, it's hard to describe. It's like there was this electric charge every time we touched or looked at each other. It was thrilling. I struggled to keep my emotions in check. And did that thrill extend to other things? Laura blushed slightly but met my gaze. Yes, it did. We ended the night walking in the park nearby, and there was a moment when we just kissed. It was passionate, intense. I felt alive in a way I haven't in years. I tried to swallow the lump in my throat. So, it was more than just a dinner. Laura nodded, her expression a mix of satisfaction and guilt. Yes. Tom's excitement was driven by the forbidden nature of our encounter. It added this layer of intensity to everything we did. I rubbed my temples, trying to process her words. It sounds like you really enjoyed yourself. Laura took a step closer and placed a hand on my arm. John, I didn't mean for this to hurt you. It's just that, sometimes, the forbidden makes everything seem more vivid, more real. I pulled away gently. Laura, I need to understand why this is happening. What does this mean for us? Laura's face softened with a trace of sadness. I don't know exactly. It's not about replacing you or our life together. It's about finding something new, something that makes me feel alive. I hope you can understand that. I shook my head, feeling a mix of betrayal and confusion. I'm trying, Laura. I really am. But it's hard to ignore how this changes everything. Laura's eyes filled with remorse. I know. I'm sorry. I wish things were different. I just needed to explore this part of myself. As Laura went to bed, I remained in the living room, the echoes of her recounting of the date reverberating through my mind. Her words had painted a vivid picture of her night with Tom, leaving me to grapple with feelings of inadequacy and loss. The intimate details of her experience had shifted the ground beneath our marriage, and I felt lost in the wake of it all. After Laura had gone to bed, I sat alone in the living room, the house eerily quiet. The silence was a stark contrast to the noise in my head. I could still see Laura's excited expression as she described her date with Tom. Her words replayed in my mind, each repetition sharpening the sense of betrayal I felt. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out into the dark, empty street. The night air was cool, and it did little to ease the turmoil inside me. I found myself grappling with the realization that Laura's excitement and passion were something I hadn't felt in our relationship for years. I thought about the early days of our marriage, the way we used to connect, the thrill of discovering each other. We had been through so much together, raising kids, managing careers, and the ebb and flow of daily life. I had always believed that the bond we shared was unshakable, that our love was enough to weather any storm. But now, faced with Laura's newfound vitality and the way she spoke about Tom, I couldn't help but question everything. Had we really let our relationship stagnate to the point where she sought something outside of us? My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Laura stirring in the bedroom. I hesitated for a moment before deciding to confront her, needing some kind of clarity, even if it meant facing more pain. I knocked lightly on our bedroom door and opened it. Laura was sitting up in bed, her hair tousled and her expression tired. "John?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "What's wrong?" I stepped into the room and sat on the edge of the bed. "Laura, I need to understand what's happening. You've been talking about Tom with such enthusiasm. What does this mean for us?" Laura's eyes were filled with a mix of regret and sadness. "John, I didn't mean for it to come to this. I was just trying to find something that I felt was missing." "I get that," I said, my voice cracking slightly. "But it feels like everything we've built together is being overshadowed by this new thing. How do we move forward from here?" Laura took a deep breath and reached out to hold my hand. "I didn't realize how much this would affect you. I thought I could find something new without it destroying what we have. But I see now how wrong that was." I squeezed her hand gently. "Laura, it's not just about you finding something new. It's about us, our history, our connection. It feels like you're looking for something outside of our marriage that should have been resolved between us. Laura's eyes welled up with tears. I'm so sorry. I thought I was just exploring a part of myself, but I didn't consider how it would hurt you. I see now that I was selfish. We sat in silence for a few moments, the weight of the conversation settling between us. I could feel the distance that had grown in our relationship, the chasm that now seemed to divide us. It was clear that things had changed, and it wasn't just a matter of Laura's new experiences, it was about the way our marriage had evolved, or devolved, over time. I need to think about this, I finally said, standing up. I don't know what the next step is for us, but I need some time to figure it out. Laura nodded, her expression one of resignation. I understand. Take all the time you need. I want us to find a way through this, but I know it's not going to be easy. As I left the room, I felt a mix of determination and despair. I needed to process what Laura had said, to reflect on our past and the future of our relationship. The path ahead was uncertain, but the conversations we had tonight had made it clear that our marriage was at a crossroads. In the days following our conversation, I found myself in a state of restless contemplation. Laura's revelations and the raw emotions that had surfaced left me grappling with a deep sense of betrayal and inadequacy. I had spent many sleepless nights replaying our past, analyzing our present, and wondering what the future held for us. One evening, as I sat alone in the living room, the silence was interrupted by the chime of a new message on my phone. It was from a dating app one had downloaded on a whim. I had created a profile a few days earlier, driven by a mix of curiosity and defiance. The message was from a young woman named Claire, and her profile intrigued me. We exchanged messages, and her enthusiasm and fresh outlook were a sharp contrast to the routine of my life. A few days later, we arranged to meet for coffee. The date itself was pleasant, filled with light conversation and an undeniable spark. Claire was lively and engaging, and I found myself drawn to her energy. As we sat in a cozy cafe, Claire leaned in with a smile. I'm really glad we met, John. It's nice to talk to someone who's genuinely interested in hearing about me. I chuckled, trying to ignore the underlying sadness I felt. I'm glad too. It's been a while since I've felt this kind of connection. Claire's eyes sparkled. So, what's your story? I mean, what are you looking for right now? I hesitated, feeling a pang of guilt. I'm just trying to figure things out. Life has been a bit complicated lately. Claire reached across the table and touched my hand gently. Well, I'm here if you need to talk or just enjoy some good company. Her gesture was comforting, but it also reminded me of how much I missed the intimacy and connection that had once been a part of my relationship with Laura. The date ended with a polite hug, and as I walked away, I realized that while Claire was a pleasant distraction, she couldn't fill the void I was feeling. The following week, I decided to explore another option. I contacted an escort named Mia through an agency. It was a decision driven partly by a desire to prove something to myself and partly by a need to reclaim a sense of control. When Mia arrived at my apartment, she exuded a confidence and sensuality that was both captivating and disconcerting. We spent the evening together, and the experience was intense and passionate. But as the night wore on, I felt an emptiness that no amount of physical connection could fill. After Mia left, I sat alone, the silence of the apartment amplifying the void I felt. I reflected on the hollow nature of the encounter and how it contrasted sharply with the deep, emotional connection I had shared with Laura, even if it had become strained. A few days later, Laura and I sat down for another conversation. Her demeanor was more subdued, and she seemed to sense the distance that had grown between us. John, I can tell something's been on your mind, Laura said, her voice tinged with concern. How are you feeling about everything? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. I've been trying to understand what's happening between us. I went out on a few dates, one with a younger woman and another with an escort. Laura's eyes widened, and she looked away, clearly distressed. John, I didn't mean for this to turn into a competition or retaliation. It's not about competition, I said, struggling to keep my emotions in check. It's about me trying to figure out what I need and what's missing in our relationship. Laura nodded slowly. I understand that you're hurt. I'm not sure what we're supposed to do now. It feels like we're both searching for something we can't quite define. I looked at her, feeling a mixture of sorrow and resolve. I think we need to be honest with ourselves and with each other. This situation has shown us how far we've drifted, and we need to decide if we can rebuild what we once had or if we need to go our separate ways. Laura's expression softened, and she reached out to hold my hand. I want to work through this, John. I really do. But I know it's going to take time and effort from both of us. I squeezed her hand gently, acknowledging the sincerity in her voice. I want that too, Laura. But we need to take things one step at a time and be patient with each other. As we sat there, hand in hand, I felt a glimmer of hope amidst the uncertainty. The road ahead was unclear, but the willingness to confront our issues and work through them together was a step in the right direction.